I would love to see more leaders and business professionals lean into their values and their faith. One of those things that I'm starting to see less of in business is kindness. It's a real simple thing. Just be kind. Don't say mean things. Kindness goes a long way in business and getting your people motivated. Kindness goes a long way in your community, in your relationships with your spouse, with your kids. That's being diminished. So I would love to see more of that. I think there's an opportunity because when you do show your values, you show kindness to folks, it stands out.
Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland and throughout Northeast Ohio. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today I had the real pleasure of speaking with DJ Eidson, president and co-founder of Limitless Minds, where he spearheads efforts to make elite mindset coaching accessible to everyone. Through their digital platforms and programs, Limitless Minds has empowered hundreds of individuals and teams across organizations like Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Chick-fil-A, Bristol Myers Squibb, Goldman Sachs, Harvard Business School, and many others to enhance their performance and gain a competitive edge. Just as Super Bowl winning quarterback Russell Wilson, who is one of DJ's co-founders, has done throughout his career. As a sought-after speaker and co-host of the Room Tilters podcast, DJ shares practical strategies for navigating change, overcoming adversity, and thriving under pressure. And as you'll hear echoed back in our conversation today, DJ has a certain commitment to excellence, pragmatic stoicism, and inspirational presence that works to inspire and help others realize their fullest potential. We cover the parallels between sports and business, the power of mindset, neutral thinking, what it means to be resilient, impacting a billion people, kindness as a business strategy, leading by example, love of Cleveland, and a whole lot more. I find there is a certain magic at the intersection of peak performance and deep humility, and I felt that is where DJ and this conversation as a whole resides. I had a lot of fun listening to DJ's stories, wisdom, and reflections on entrepreneurship, and I hope you all do as well. Lay of the Land is brought to you and is proudly sponsored by Roundstone Insurance. Headquartered in Rocky River, Ohio, Roundstone shares Lay of the Land's same passion for bold ideas and lasting impact from our community's entrepreneurs, innovators, and leaders. Since 2005, Roundstone has pioneered a self-funded captive health insurance model that delivers robust savings for small and medium-sized businesses. They are part of the solution to rising healthcare costs, helping employers offer affordable, high-quality care while driving job creation and economic growth throughout Northeast Ohio. Like many of the voices featured on Lay of the Land, including Roundstone's founder and CEO Mike Schroeder, Roundstone believes entrepreneurship, innovation, and community to be the cornerstones of progress. To learn more about how Roundstone is transforming employee health benefits by empowering employers to save thousands in per employee per year healthcare costs, please visit roundstoneinsurance.com. Roundstone Insurance, built for entrepreneurs, backed by innovation, committed to Cleveland. When you and I first connected, you recounted a lot of your story, which I hope we can cover here today. But there was a particularly formative moment in your journey in this transition from working in the pharmaceutical industry, which we can talk about, to entrepreneurship that I thought would be a great place to start, because as much as it has stuck with me since you mentioned it, it obviously was even more impactful for you and feels like a great foundation to build the conversation on here today.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about chicken soup for the soul.
Yes. And Bob, yes. And Bob Moad, when I was in pharmaceuticals, I had the opportunity to build and launch teams. And I was constantly trying to figure out, how do I build into my team's mindset? Because I understood that their skill set was important, but like when it was an adversity, a challenge, a change, that when the pressure was high, how do you get into their mindset so that they can perform and optimize their performance? So I was always thinking about that when I was a young rep, then a young leader. And at my last stop at Horizon Therapeutics, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman by the name of Harry Wilson. And Harry and I would share best practices around how are we building into our teams? What podcasts are we listening to? What books are we reading? And while we were doing that and having some success with our teams, Harry said, you gotta meet my brother and his mental conditioning coach. And I said, well, I know your brother, and for those that don't know, which I'm sure most people don't, Harry Wilson's brother is Russell Wilson, Super Bowl winning quarterback Russell Wilson, who's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for all my Cleveland Browns fans, sorry about that, but that's where he's at. And anyways, but and Russell had at that time a mental conditioning coach, and his name was Trevor Moawad. And so Trevor and Russell, since Russell was in the NFL Combine, were locked at the hip together. Trevor teaching Russell some of these mindset principles and how he can optimize his performance, not just from a physical perspective, but how do you train your mind in a way that you can really reach peak performance from a mental perspective? And so Harry was like, we got to go out there and meet Russ and Trev, because I think a lot of the stuff that they're doing in sports, we can bring to business. And so we did that. We flew out to Seattle at the time when Russell was playing for the Seattle Seahawks. And we met with Trevor, we met with Russ, and Trevor found out very quickly what Russ saw in Trevor. Trevor was, brought up getting a seminar every night from his father, Bob Moawad, who was one of the original authors for Chicken Soup for the Soul. So he got a seminar every night from his dad at the dinner table, and just really lived and breathed these mindset principles: neutral thinking, illusion of choice, pressures of privilege, all the things that we teach now. So Trevor not only grew up, but then started to work with teams like University of Alabama, University of Georgia, and then major corporations and peak performers like Russell Wilson. And so when we went out there and we met with them, I realized really quickly what they're doing in sports and what we're doing in business. There's a lot of overlap, and we can impact a lot of people if we take that curriculum, if we take those concepts and bring them into the business world for the corporate athlete. And so that's what Harry and I did. We left that meeting. We built out a business plan. We presented it to Horizon Therapeutics, where we were at, and we were working for them at the time. We brought Trevor Moawad in to a national sales meeting, and he blew the doors off. Again, bringing some of those chicken soup for the soul type concepts and these mindset concepts that he teaches into the fold. And when he left the stage, as soon as he left, the executive said, we want more. We want more for our people. So Harry and I then, we activated that business plan. We started working with that company, Horizon, who has since sold their business. 5 years later, they sold the business for $28 billion. So a lot of those executives are really, really happy with us and the work that we helped do there. But it's one of those things. It all started with a simple book that I think a lot of people read as kids, or maybe their parents read, and now is morphed into, those concepts have morphed into the company that we have today, and been able to build and successfully build. So mindset is important. There's a lot of great books and authors and speakers out there. I think what we've done is we've taken these unique concepts and put some language behind it, put a curriculum behind it, and we're going out there trying to impact the world.
Chicken soup for the soul.
Chicken soup for the soul, man.
Once you mentioned it, I was like, man, I gotta learn a lot more.
Well,
about
everybody
that.
remembers that book, right? It's like, I think, and then they had like Chicken Soup for the Soul for teachers and for relationships and couples, and there was a Chicken Soup for the Soul for everything. But I think it gets to, and I think the reason why that book was so popular is because it really gets to the fact that people, a lot of times, they know what to do, they just don't necessarily have the mindset and the courage to do it. And that's what we've been able to really simplify through a trademark concept that we have, neutral thinking. It's like neutral thinking takes out the judgment, it takes out the narrative. It just focuses on truth and facts so that you can get behind the right actions and behaviors that help drive your performance. I'm a father of 5. I've been married now 20 years. I lead teams. I've built businesses, but I have to start with the truth first before I make a decision or give any kind of advice. Because if I don't do that, my advice and the decisions that I make will be misguided. And so neutral thinking is very foundational in terms of the way I lead, and some of the best teams in the world utilize these concepts. I just flew back yesterday from Charlotte working with Lowe's. We were at their corporate office, and it's Lowe's University. They gave us the red little penny jacket too, which is really cool. Yeah, with my name on it, DJ. But and simultaneously, we're working with one of the biggest and best pharmaceutical companies in the world at a different location, teaching them these concepts. It's just, they're powerful. They help you as a professional. They help you in your personal life and how you show up in your community. And so I'm really excited to share some of those things with you today.
Yeah. Well, mindset will obviously permeate our whole conversation here.
That's right.
And so it applied to yourself, this concept of mindset. I would be remiss, I think, to not ask about where your own entrepreneurial mindset came from and how you cultivated it.
Yeah.
Knowing you ultimately made this kind of pivotal leap to it.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about, yourself, your early influences, your upbringing.
Yeah.
I know we spent a lot of time talking about that when we first connected.
Yeah, it's interesting because being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's really scary. I mentioned 5 kids and my wife, and regardless of who I was partnering with, whether it was Harry, Russell, Trevor, leaving a salary, corporate America, bonus, stock options, all those things on the table was really scary. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. But you mentioned as a kid early on, I had this itch like when I was really, really young. My youngest right now is 6, and I couldn't have been much more than 6 or 7 years old when I was going door to door, just knocking on my neighbor's door for money. Now, I didn't have any product. I literally went and asked each neighbor for money because I think my mom at the time was trying to get me out of the house. She goes, "Why don't you go get a job, go make some money," whatever it was. And she didn't think I would seriously. So I went around and I come back with this like pockets full of money. And my mom goes, where did you get all this cash? And I said, well, you told me to go out and get a job. So I went and asked, and she goes, you can't do that. Like you have to give them something in return. You can't just take people's money. And so I started drawing pictures, and I went back to each of the houses and gave them a picture. And that was kind of my first foray at what it looks like to make money and
that's the best rendition of the childhood lemonade stand I've ever heard. That I
appreciate it. It was, but I think the feeling when you provide something for someone or you ask something from someone and you get it, it's a fulfilling experience. And so I took that, and by the time I got to middle school, I still had this itch. And what I would do on Halloween is, just like everybody, I'd go around, get as much candy as I could. I'd fill up pillowcases full of candy. And then I would take those pillowcases and I would stick them in my closet. And then I would wait about 2 or 3 weeks. And when everybody had run through all their candy, I'd pull those pillowcases out. And then I would go to school. I went to middle school and I would sell the candy. And because, people had built up a pretty good habit of eating candy for 3 weeks. And so they would buy the candy. And then a couple of my buddies were like, hey, I want to make some money too. So I would give them at the beginning of the day some candy. They would go get money, then bring me back a certain amount of money, and I'd give them some. And then when I ran out of candy, then I would take the money that I had. My mom would go to Sam's wholesale, and I would get Jolly Ranchers. And that was the main thing I would sell. And she'd buy a bunch of those, and I would sell them for 5-10 cents a piece, whatever it was. And then I would have other people selling them. And so that was kind of my first business.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
employees. Discipline, supply, demand. That's real.
But I learned, I guess you're right. I learned about margins. Like I had great margins because I was getting free candy initially. Some people didn't bring all the money back. So I had to learn about employee management and how you navigate and build trust with your teams and all these things. I didn't know all that at the time, but I realized through my experiences in building teams and businesses that all that stuff was applicable. And so I was an entrepreneur for several years as a kid, but then I started to use my very logical brain, and obviously went to college and got internships and started in corporate America. And I would utilize those entrepreneurial skills, but it wasn't my business. And then as I navigated through that, one of the things I didn't mention is around the same time I met Harry Wilson at Horizon, I also started taking some of the stock options and things that I had, and I bought a small apartment complex, which was terrifying. It was 12 units right here it was in Lorain, Ohio. And I bought it. I didn't know what I was doing, but after I bought it, a month later, I'm sitting at a Bob Evans with one of my sales reps, and working for Horizon, and my phone keeps dinging. It dings. I kind of ignore it, feel it buzzing again, ignore it.
Yeah.
And finally, after like the third buzz, I pick it up and I see in my bank account, $600 had just went in, and then another $550, and then another $650. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just made whatever, 13, 15, $1,800, whatever. And I'm sitting here at a Bob Evans. And I realized those were the transactions that were coming through from the Lorraine property. And I could make money while I was making money. And so I was like, now I started feeling like the kid with the candy bag. I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. And so as I was doing some of the real estate stuff, that's what really started giving me some of the courage too, to say, oh, you know what? Like, they were a really good idea with Trevor and Russ and Harry. How do we really build that out and take the leap? Because if you can scale and build a business, you can service people. I was providing great housing at the time and still do in my Lorraine property. We fixed it up, made them nice, and give people a really nice place to live. And then also you can provide great services and impact people in the case of Limitless Minds. So that's kind of where it started, and obviously now where it is up to this point. But I've always had that itch, man. Always had that itch.
Yeah. So to kind of ground the founding of Limitless Minds, obviously you had formed these meaningful relationships with Harry and Russell and Trevor.
Yeah.
And you recognized, I think, maybe what is now like a passion for mindset and all aspects of it. When did you begin to understand how and why you wanted to build a business around mindset? Like what was kind of the impetus for that? And did you have a vision for a company ultimately, or like how did you begin to explore the application of mindset and the opportunity there?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I started out, I mentioned I was a sales rep. I sold drugs. I sold pharmaceuticals. It was like my mom was so proud. I'm a legal drug dealer. But I sold pharmaceuticals, and then Claritin and Nasonex is what I first started selling, allergy medications. And as I became more successful at that, I started to get into positions where I could lead and train and develop people. So there were two roles that I took in pharma where I started to learn how to develop people. And that's where it was like, this is awesome, because I'm helping people believe in themselves, reach goals. I sit down with my reps when I first hire them and I say, what are your goals? And they would say, well, I want to get this many prescriptions and this. And I'm like, no. What are your goals? You're 24 years old. I know you got a fiance. You want to get married. Do you want a house? Do you want kids? Tell me really your big goals, short and long term. And then once I learned their goals, then that's what I'd get behind every single time, in terms of like, everything that we're doing is helping you become a better father someday, or wife, or whatever it is. And you're also showing up really awesome to work, because those same skill sets are going to help influence and find the right medication for the right patient. And so as I started to get a taste of that, I'm like, I don't necessarily love the whole individual contributor piece, because it was great, you'd win, but it was really, you were really focused on you. But when I had this force multiplier of being able to impact people, that's where I got really excited. So I say that because it was the same thing with Limitless Minds. I mean, we brought Trevor into Horizon, and Horizon loved it. And it could have stopped right there, in terms of we could have just used it for Horizon and build out a program there and probably got raises and promotions as a result of it. But what we saw was something bigger. Like, we can impact millions of people and through this program, but we can't do it if we just keep it at Horizon. So it was almost like, how do you duplicate? How do you scale? How do you become a force multiplier? And so that has what, not only just the entrepreneurial spirit of it and just being able to build something, but the people impact, the end result is really what drives me.
So what is Limitless Minds, and how has it evolved over time?
Yeah, so Limitless Minds is a peak performance company. We help optimize your performance through mindset. And we do that with our training. We have services, part of our business, where we'll do keynotes and workshops and pull through training. And then we also have a product, which is an app, a web-based app where you can have content, coaches, community. We have an AI coach that's a part of that. So whether we show up live or whether we impact you virtually, we want to be able to go along a journey. So like I just mentioned, we're with Lowe's, working with them. We do a live event, but then how do we put together a program that we can, no matter if the sales are up, sales are down, there's a layoff, there's a cut, there's an expansion, a new competitor. How do we go along those ups and downs with Lowe's so that they have the right mindset to reach peak performance and reach their goals? So that's essentially what we do at Limitless.
How has the company and vision evolved over time?
So it started out as it was really services based only. We were doing keynotes and workshops. We were doing, ironically, and this was 6 years, almost 7 years ago, we were doing customized podcast for companies, which is pretty cool. And so that was really our only digital component. And what it's evolved to is like we've really scaled not only working with a number of the top companies in the world, names you would recognize. I named a couple of them, but Johnson & Johnson, Amazon, Pfizer, right here in town, US Bank, Sherwin-Williams we've worked with, Highland Software. And so there's a lot of companies that we've worked with. So we've definitely scaled in that capacity. And the vision is we're going to have to continue to evolve our product in a way where you don't reach, and our goal is to reach 1 billion people through mindset and help develop a billion people. That's with a B. You can't do that through keynotes only. And so the technology aspect is what we've really been leaning into, is say, how do we give people access to a coach like a Russell Wilson has or a Tom Brady, and so that we can really impact the corporate athlete, and then even evolve beyond that. We'd love to get and impact kids and the student athlete and coaches, and there's a lot of application in what we teach for the youth too as well. We're not there yet. We've tested out a couple things, and we know that there's an appetite for it and there's a market for it. But that's how we're evolving.
So I want to dive a little deeper into a few areas, but to start, you had mentioned this kind of observation at the beginning of the overlap in lessons learned from top tier athletes and athletic programs in their application to the corporate world. And I always find myself really interested in the parallels between founders and athletes, because they share, I think, like a similarly single-mindedness and level of passion for what they're doing to a degree that is almost off-putting to other people sometimes. And it's just, but they're compelled. It's within them. They have to do it. They don't have a choice.
Right.
What did you observe as the set of things that the corporate world could benefit from, or were even at least applicable from the athletic world?
Yeah, I think what I learned really quick watching top performers, whether they're in sports or in business, is that you mentioned one of the things, the level of focus and intentionality is incredible with elite athletes. And I think the same too, if somebody was willing to take that risk and go out on their own and build a business, taking the risk, the belief in themselves is super important. Any team, whether I was in corporate America or building this business or in sports, and when I played college basketball for a couple years, played high school basketball, you had to believe like at the foundation that you could get it done. That belief had to be, and I didn't grow until like my junior year. I grew 7 inches between my sophomore and junior year. So I was always the little guy, just like believing I was big and I could do things that I couldn't do, right? Like probably had no business doing. But that level of belief is really important. And the other thing is too, top performers, regardless, again, whether in sports or business, there's the sense of they know adversity is coming, but they also have a game plan for it. Where I think a lot of the middle or even bottom tier, they act surprised every time that an adversity or a challenge or a change hits. And so the quicker you accept that, it's like, if I asked you right now, okay, what's the weather outside like? What would you say?
Cold and sunny.
Cold and sunny. Well, it's actually, I think it's it's 18 degrees right now.
Pretty cold.
It's 18 degrees. That's the fact. Now, we've labeled it cold, and in the cases it's sunny. Right? That's a fact. But I think a lot of times we put a lot of feeling around things that are just factual. And I see we all do it. It's just like, do we have the intention?
Penguins 18 isn't cold.
Right. It's not cold. If I have 3 or 4 layers on and a hat, I'm hot. I'm actually hot when I go outside. And so, but the truth is, if we look at it neutrally, it's 18 degrees. The barometric pressure is 7, whatever it is. And so that's what we have to condition ourselves to do on a regular basis. So in business, it's like, oh my gosh, man, this economy is terrible right now. What is it? So, okay, so interest rates are 8%. Okay, so maybe we don't borrow as much. Maybe we invest more. So that actual number, the fact, helps us to dictate our behavior, which helps us get to our results. We all do a good job of this at times, but being intentional about it is where you start to get to that next level. So what we've seen is if you got a whole organization, tens of thousands of people, say at Johnson & Johnson, that are all rowing the same direction in this area of mindset, that's how you move the middle. Because Jeffrey, you're gonna read the books, you're gonna listen to the podcast, you're gonna do the extra work. That's what top performers do. The middle is the ones that kind of need the extra. This is how we connect the dots. And then when we also give a top performer words and language on how to do more of what they've already been doing, it takes them to the next level. And so that's what I see in sports and business and how it overlaps.
When you look kind of holistically at the space that you're operating in,
Mm-hmm.
and this is anecdotal, I don't have numbers behind this, but to me it feels there is an inundation almost of coaches and folks with advice to give. And
So true.
you have been able, I think, to cut through the noise of it with Real Signal. And I'm curious how you think about differentiation, outcomes. What has allowed for you and Limitless Minds to grow into the formidable organization that it is, with credibility in this like world where everyone is vying to give you advice?
Yeah, I would say you get in the door, and this initially how we did with sizzle, something to capture somebody's attention. And so you can do that a lot of different ways. We're able to say, hey, this is what's been used with elite athletes. Here's a couple of them, elite teams. Here's a handful of them. That's how initially you get that sizzle. But that you got to have more than sizzle. You got to have some substance. So that's my second S, is substance. What is the actual content? And then what are you measuring? We measure resilience. We measure energy management, awareness, clarity, thinking. And so you measure those different areas, and that's what gives you the substance, is what you teach in the content, and then the deliverables, the results, and can we move those different areas? And then the last thing is scalability. How do you scale and impact people in a way where you can meet them where they are? So some people want to be met through a podcast. That's why we do a lot of these, and we have our own podcast. Some people want to be met through a live engagement, and they want a workshop. They want to actually do the work and go through it. Some people want to meet virtually, and we do virtual workshops. Some people just want to talk to a phone or a web-based app. We can do that too, and we have an AI coach there. And so that's the scalability part. And so I always try to think of things through those three S's when we're building any kind of business. Can you grab somebody's attention with the sizzle? Can you most importantly give them some substance? And then can you scale it?
How do you measure resiliency?
So in the app, you can actually measure resiliency based on not only the exercises that you do, self-assessments, so that all can be measured through the app.
Right. But how do you think about what it means to measure resiliency?
Yeah. How quickly somebody can bounce back, how quickly they can frame. So another thing is like, even think the actual thinking of when I do send and give out information, do you automatically go negative, or can you process it as neutral? Because that's going to be a gauge on how quickly you can bounce back and actually focus on what you need to do. So there's different exercises, and there's different assessment tools, again, within the app, that you'll be able to measure that, again, along with energy management, awareness, clarity, and thinking overall. So I'd love for the listeners here to jump on to limitlessminds.com and try Numi out, and try the actual app out, because you'll see there's an abundance of great information and measurement tools in there.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask about the app, actually, because I remember, again, when we first connected in the evolution of Limitless Minds, there was this moment where you came to a decision that it made sense to offer a product in addition to the workshops and the live sessions that you're doing. What was that decision like? Like, how did you approach that? And how do you think about more holistically the role of technology in this kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, because when we started the company, and I didn't mention, we started the company with Trevor, and unfortunately 3 years ago we lost Trevor to a battle with cancer. But I was the last person that talked to Trevor. I was sitting at his bedside when he passed, and one of the last things I said when he was able to hear was that we were going to carry on the legacy of not only what he taught, but Limitless Minds, and really continue to impact people. When we first started with Trev, Trev could barely log on to his own computer. So this was definitely, we didn't start with saying, hey, we're going to be this technology company. But as we started to listen to our customers and go deeper with them, we realized that if you do want to impact the amount of people that we want to, that technology was going to be a huge focus. And so that's kind of how we morphed into it. And as it stands today, and that's something that, as AI, that's one of the critical roles that we hired a year ago, was like just a head of AI. How can we start to take the coaches that we have? We have 22 coaches, and start to take those concepts and build an AI coach out so that somebody can have access to that coach when and where they want and need them. So that's part of the evolution. And then just also having a repository of information from the best and brightest coaches that people can access at any time. And then skill development, like I said, the exercises on the app, the ability to be able to measure and remeasure so you can constantly see where you're at in these areas. Those are all things that as we evolve that we feel are important. We're seeing that, the market is saying that these are things that we should lean into. And so we'll continue to do that. But I don't think there'll never be a fixed mindset around this business that we're building. When COVID hit, we went from doing 99% of things live to 99% of things virtual. It was just overnight. We had to pivot and do that. And if we would have been stuck in them and been like, what? This is just this COVID thing. It's going to pass and we'll see people in a month or 2 weeks. We've been out of business. When our co-founder passed, not only was a friend, but he's a huge part of the business. But if we wouldn't have scaled the amount of coaches that we had, and we just would have said, nope, you're going to get Trevor Moawad every time, not only would we been doing a disservice in terms of our clients by not giving them a diversity of talent and coaches, but we'd be out of business because we'd had one coach. So we're constantly looking at ways to evolve and continue to serve our clients.
Well, I'll say I think that's a beautiful way to honor, Trevor's legacy.
Thank you.
Continuing the work.
He means so much to me, man. I when I was at the event this week, I brought a couple books and wrote some notes in the books to some of the people that were there. When I was writing and thinking about delivering the book, I was just like, oh, I'll give this book to him tomorrow. But when I handed him the book, it all kind of hit me. It's like, man, I was with Trevor when he wrote this. I know what it meant to him. He's still impacting people. And I know what this book is going to do for them. And it was kind of weird, the emotions that hit me at that time. But this is real. The concepts that he teaches, the impact that he's made, and the impact that we're making. It's very rewarding, but it's also at times pretty emotional too, because it's deeper than just some kind of basic skills training. I think our clients and our customers and the people that we serve, they see that.
Yeah. How do you think about that impact and what success ultimately looks like when someone works with Limitless Minds?
Yeah. So the thing is that you start out and you got to get a deep understanding of their business. And you can start with that through a Zoom call, but you really have to get out there and meet them face to face to start to understand where they're at and their needs and really how you can take the components of what we have to develop a program to grow their people. So that's first off. Then you get into understanding what their goals are. And so it's very clear when we work with clients, here's what we want to do from the retention standpoint. Here's what we want to do from a revenue standpoint. Whatever the KPIs are and the goals are, those are things that we need to understand, because that as we move those different areas of resiliency, energy management, clarity, thinking, we want to make sure that we're moving those people in the areas of their KPIs and that they're reaching their goals. And so the understanding around those goals, getting behind it, being able to rattle off, okay, you're trying to get to 100 million. Okay, you're at 90 right now. What do we have to do to fill that gap? And everything we talk about will align. Here's how that mindset principle is going to help you get that extra 10 million. And here's what it's going to mean to you as a professional. Here's what it's going to mean to you when you show up, at home. Because some of this stuff does spill over into personal, obviously, because the people are trying to juggle both. And so understanding their goals and aligning what we teach behind them. And so when you look up at the end of the year or the end of 5 years, like we did at Horizon, I think what we can say there is they exited their business. There's a lot of people that are happy, a lot of millionaires over there. And we had a small part helping them navigate through that. So, yeah.
To the degree you can speak to some of them, are there particular stories, people you've worked with that you find yourself thinking about the impact of the kind of work that you've done and how it's affected the business or people's lives?
Yeah, I think a lot about one of our first big meetings was at Johnson & Johnson in 2018. And there were 235 VP level, director level leaders there. And at the time, it was an unbelievable deal for us because A, it was Johnson & Johnson. B, it was the biggest deal that we had done up to that point. And we knew that we were going to be able to put Trevor in front of everybody. We had workshops after, and we were going to be able to make a true impact on this group for that. I think it was a day and a half of workshops and keynotes. And we were able to showcase a couple other speakers that day too. We had to bring some other folks in just because Trevor didn't have the bandwidth at that time. But when I look back, I bring that event up because what's happened now is those 235 people are now either leaders at J&J or even they've gone off to other companies. And now we're being asked to come back and service them. And they're telling us the stories of how we impacted them. Rob Tremmel, a really good friend of mine, worked at J&J, is now with a different pharma company. But I mean, I know and been able to see his two kids grow up over these years, his wife, Megan, all the different things that I've watched him go through and how neutral thinking, getting to neutral, the book, It Takes What It Takes, the other book that Trevor wrote, has had a significant impact on him, his promotions, his leaderships, his family. And so he was in that room. And there were other people that were in that room early on at J&J that we were able to impact, that I get to hear those stories on a regular basis. So for me, that shows the impact that we've been able to make. And it's really a gift that continues to just grow.
So not for lack of ambition, when you think about the billion people that you're hoping to impact here, and the delta between where you are and aspirationally, where you'd like to be at that scale, what does that path look like? How do you get there?
It's a great question because it's almost like, and I say this all the time when I talk to Harry or one of our other executives. His name is David Gorsuch. The impact that we have, somebody may be in a room, like I said, in 2018 or room in 2025, and something they heard, something they read, a concept that they learned how to activate, they may either go out and do it themselves or may teach it to somebody else that goes out and does it. And that impact may impact 10 million people, 100 million people. Maybe it impacts 1 billion people. Maybe that person that they taught the concept to goes on and becomes the president of the United States, whatever it is, and utilizes neutral thinking. And so I don't know, Jeffrey, quite how to quantify it at this point. And that's a problem because, we're saying we want to impact 1 billion people, but I am trying to figure out what the true impact. I can tell you how many people we impacted in a year or 3 years or whatever by how many people went through our keynotes. But that's not the true number, especially when you hear how my son's using this or he used it with his basketball team or whatever it is. And so that's been the hard thing. But I don't think that should be what stops us from trying to get to 1 billion. I'd rather find out about it 10 years from now and somebody is up on a huge stage and they say, you know what, I applied neutral thinking. This is how it impacted my life. And this is how I've been impacting yours, and the reason why, I've been able to do that effectively, that will ultimately tell the true story of how many people we impacted. So more to come. I hope the next time we talk, I have a clearer answer, but that's where I'm at.
Full transparency. That's great. What do you wish more people understood about mindset? That
it's ongoing. It never stops. The growth never stops. And that you have to be really, really intentional about your mind and what you let in. And I think that if we're not intentional about it, I mean, you go into a restaurant, a coffee shop, everybody is glued to their phone. They're consuming information. What are you letting in? Garbage in, garbage out. And how do you filter and become somebody that is allowing not allowing negativity to drive your decisions? You have to be intentional about it. How do you start your day out? What are you consuming? What are you not consuming? And the last thing I'll say is, and this again tied to mindset, is who are you putting yourself around? And just do a quick litmus test. If somebody's more negative than they are positive, I would stop talking to them as much as you do. There might be some people you just can't. It just is what it is. They're family, they're really close friends, neighbors, but limit the amount of exposure that you give to them, because it does impact you. They do a lot of studies around negative thoughts. I think there's 6,200 thoughts that you have a day, and 90% of them are negative. Back in the day, that's how you survive, right? There's saber-toothed tiger. You got to make sure that you're always on, aware that somebody's trying to get you. But that's our animal brain. But right now, here where we're at today, you have these negative thoughts, but most of the things don't even come true. You've overworked yourself and created a certain level of anxiety that is unnecessary and is counterproductive for helping you to achieve your goals. So if I was to tell anybody around mindset, just be intentional about it and make sure that you know that people are constantly trying to get into your mind through marketing and sales and all the different ways they're trying to drive you and influence you. If you're not intentional, they are. And so just know that.
I mean, that was made crystal clear to me when I heard about how Netflix is competing, not with HBO, but with sleep.
Wow.
I'm like, man, that's intentional right there.
That's powerful. That's what they're talking about in there. And now they're trying to figure out how to unravel it, some of them, because they realize, well, I didn't know it would go that negative. There's some of my Twitter X or whatever, the things that come up on my feed, I'm like, how did that get on? How would they think that I would be okay with seeing or hearing that? There are things that are on my feed that are just outright racist. Why would that hit my feed? And then how many other, and then you know what I immediately do, Jeffrey? I look at how many people saw that, and it's 9 million, 25 million, 60 million. I'm like, dang, shut that down. You know what I mean? Like I can't have, because it's not worth my mind space. And so how do I minimize that? And we're trying to, when I say shut it down, we're all trying to juggle, because guess what? Yep. We have to be in these spaces too for work. So how do you balance? I didn't watch the news for a week, and then 3 days into the wildfires, people are like, yo, have you heard about what's going on in LA? I'm like, no. And they're like, what? And then I'm like, oh gosh, I need to know that, because I got loved ones. We have clients, investors. We have all these folks out there. I want to be able to pray for them. I want to be able to reach out to them. So how do I watch enough news to be informed, but not too much to where I go negative? So it's the intentionality piece it's very real.
I mean, that is the problem of our era right there, right? I think.
Yeah. It's crazy. I just started a book that Trevor used to talk about all the time. He'd reference it with his father, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And he used to always reference it like different ways. Even though he was the neutral thinking guru, he would talk about this. And I think it's because his dad was big on positive thinking and Norman Vincent Peale. But what I've been fascinated about it, and I think it was written in, I don't know, man, like 40s or 50s. You have to fact check me on that. But it was a long time ago. But man, his ability to be just proactive about how he was training his mind and really clear on what to do. He was talking about salespeople and getting subscribers. And I'm just like, dude, this is all applicable to what we're talking about now. Like it's crazy, but it's, if you don't have a plan for it, yeah, like you said, Netflix will, Instagram will, they all got, they got a plan for you. And then they'll switch their plan too. I saw one of the executives talking about how whatever they were doing before, they're not doing now. And this, like, and they, with no real explanation of facts of why they're changed. It's just like, we're gonna switch it up, and so you gotta be prepared for that and have a plan for it.
If you had a magic wand and you can change one thing about global business culture, what do you think is like the thing that is holding the most amount of people back that you would want to change?
I would say that people are leaning more into their own judgment and what they think they should do, and they're leaning less and away from their values, their core beliefs, their faith, and that is causing a lot of confusion in people's compass in terms of how they lead. And again, it can be really confusing if you don't know the truth. What I would love to see is more leaders and business professionals lean into their values and their faith. And one of those things that I'm starting to see less of in business is, and just in around, is kindness. It's a real simple thing. Just be kind. Don't say mean things. And kindness goes a long way in business and getting your people motivated. Kindness goes a long way in your community, in your relationships with your spouse, with your kids. And so that's being diminished. So I would love to see more of that. So that's just an example of kind of values wise. But yeah, I mean, and again, but I think there's an opportunity because when you do show your values, you show kindness to folks, like it stands out. And I think people remember it. And I haven't been in business that long. I'm 47 years old. Actually, I might be. Am I 48 now? I think I'm 47. I'm 47. I always forget my.
I can't fact check you there, so I don't know. So
I'm 40. I'm 47. But I've seen this ups and downs where certain things fly and they don't. And I was telling my kids this the other day. I go, one thing you're not going to get from your dad is that I don't ever want your kids or my grandkids for you to have to explain why dad was acting a certain way, like why he wasn't kind or didn't treat this person a certain way. And you have to make an excuse for, oh, it was just like that back in the day, or that was during that time. It's like, no. Kindness is consistent. You don't treat somebody in a way that diminishes them. And so that's a driving force for me with 5 kids. Is I want to be somebody that leads by example and that they don't have to go trying to make an excuse for some, 20 years, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When you reflect on the whole of your entrepreneurial journey, what earned wisdom do you feel you've accumulated along the way? Obviously, there's many things there, but like what sticks out to you as particularly important, applied to yourself and your own mindset?
It's a great question because the first thing that comes to mind is that I really don't know much at all. And I'm not trying to say that to be like, I'm just saying like I am humbled on a daily basis that, man, I thought if it was my business, this is what I would do. And it would just be that simple. And so if I could go back to my younger self, I would have so much less judgment on the people that have raised their hand to lead, because that is such a brave and courageous thing to do. And I remember judging leadership for their decisions, not knowing half of what was going on, but acting like I knew it all. And so humbly, I still have a ton to learn. I think that the thing I do well and that I think probably stands out is I at least try to lead really well. And I try to learn from my past experiences but leadership is very, very difficult. Founding a company with other people, you obviously you have different opinions and views on different things, and just trying to come up with the right next step collectively as a group. There's challenges around that at different times. And so I'm just constantly trying to learn and really humbled by the experience of being an entrepreneur for sure.
Yeah. Well, it rings true of the application of intentionality to things you're doing. And it is certainly a humbling process.
No question.
Yeah. So we'll bookend the conversation here, bring it back to Cleveland.
Yes.
Well, I'll ask the traditional closing question, but I'm curious just how you've thought about Cleveland in the whole journey and work you've done with the community. And I know it's also something important to you, but just what the Cleveland thread looks like.
Yeah. What's interesting is I was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio, and then we moved to Bowling Green. So I'm a Northwest Ohio kid, moved here in 2001. So I guess I've been here, 24 years. But what I've seen is when I first got here, it was just place because I had a job here. Good job. This is my territory. Where you want me at? Youngstown, Akron, Cleveland. I'll take it. And what it's evolved to, though, is a true love for the city, a true love for my community. Fairview Park. I live here in Fairview Park, and whether it's helping with youth sports, whether it's volunteering in the community, helping at the schools, going and just sitting at lunch with my kids in their lunchroom. These are things that like I have a real passion for right here in Fairview, but also Cleveland as a whole. And what I didn't realize when I was in corporate America is how much and how great the businesses that people were building right here in my backyard. I was literally focused on doctors and hospitals and didn't realize that you have all these businesses of real estate, like I told you, that is true passion, and then the small businesses that are popping up everywhere, how well downtown is thriving, the tech community. Just there's so much going on in Cleveland. And so now over the last 5 years, 6 years, it's been how do you tap into some of those minds and learn from some of the best and brightest? And right here in your backyard. I love that the cost of living is low. I love that I can fly in and out. I mentioned my business trip. I was back home by 5:30 yesterday to be able to have dinner with my family, but yet was in a corporate boardroom hours before. It's easy. They're easy flights, and but you can make so much happen and have extra resources to actually give, which I think is really incredible. Money for me is a tool to buy time and to give. That's how I look at it. And I don't think there's a better place to do it than right here in Northeast Ohio. And so I've got a lot of love for Cleveland. And it did not start like that when I was in Northwest Ohio. Cleveland was just like, it was kind of an eye roll because everybody from Bowling Green State University, where I ended up, would say, I'm from Cleveland. And I'm like, where at? Vermilion, Menor. But I'm like, no, that's not Cleveland. But I get it now. Now that I'm here, I get it.
Yeah.
That is Cleveland. And people got a lot of love for this geography. So, and I share that with them.
Well, it's a perfect segue then to our closing question, which is for a hidden gem in the area, something that other folks should know about, but perhaps they don't.
Gosh, I got it. 5 Points Coffee in West Park. It is the best coffee shop. First of all, Connor has built an amazing team there, and they're friendly. The coffee's amazing. The inside's awesome. It's a quaint little inside, but they also, during the spring, it's a great place to work outside. They have an outlet outdoors. The sun hits at the perfect time, so you're not too hot, too cold. That is a hit for people that work remotely. Hidden gem. Just save me that first seat, the round table that's next to the outlet. I ask that you save that for me, or at least let me get a spot there at the table. But yeah, West Park in 5 Points Coffee.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, DJ, I just want to thank you. Forgive my triteness, but I appreciate your mindset.
Oh, thanks.
And and really, all your reflections and perspective on your journey and the business journey.
Thanks, Jeffrey. You ask great questions, man, and that because they provoke you to think. And I would encourage you to continue to do great podcasts like you're doing. It's good work, and it's highlighting what's going on in Cleveland. I wish I would have listened to a podcast like this 10 years ago. I might have started the business earlier. And it's amazing that when you network, I always say that I've never gotten anywhere just with my own knowledge or whatever. It's always been somebody that has pulled me up, connected me to the right person. And I think this is a great example of how you're doing that at scale. So thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. If people had anything they wanted to follow up with you about, where would you point them?
Yeah, I would go to just follow us on LinkedIn. Is a great place to follow us. Limitless Minds. Just you type that in, you'll see us. And limitlessminds.com. If you hit the contact us page, we can get you more information. And so you'll see there's a tab for our product and the technology. There's also a tab for keynotes and workshops and different types of training that we do. So just kind of navigate around that. And if you want more information there, you can follow me personally, DJ Eidson, and LinkedIn is probably the best place, but Instagram, I'm starting to do a little bit more there. And so you'll see us on there. And I don't do much on Twitter, so you can stay away from me there, especially the way that's going now.
Yep.
But man, I'd love if people would reach out and any questions or whatever. I'd love to get connected. We can grab a coffee, whatever.
Awesome. Well, thank you, DJ.
Thanks, man. Great seeing you.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm or find us on Twitter @podlayoftheland or @sternhefe, JEFE. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with the Up Company, LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.